this is. And I always go by the philosophy of, if you're the smartest man in the room, you're in the wrong room, right? So me coming in doing wholesale changes, well, I need to figure out what works first.
Yeah.
What's worked to get you to this point first, and then go from there. But yeah, you definitely got to have that trust and build that trust and have before you can really just start taking the sledgehammer to everything.
Yeah.
Because like I said, you're just going to have people just angry and upset, and then you got a company, but you ain't got nobody to staff the trucks.
Welcome to Success Leaves Clues podcast, where I find regular people doing extraordinary and phenomenal things in corporate America and entrepreneurship. Of course, I'm your host, Dr. K. I have with me today, Sidney Lucas, the owner of 360 Home Inspections. It's been a little while trying to get this together.
It has, man. Schedules, both busy. We had it nailed down, and then my wife saw it in the schedule, and she says, "Well, I already had plans that evening." So then we moved it, and then we moved it again because she said it was okay. And then you had some meetings, and then going out of town, and then here we are.
Yeah, well, that's all right. Wife trumps everything.
That's right. So, that's right.
That's the boss. But it's a good thing. Not to cancel the show, but I kind of like that because if you weren't somebody so successful, an entrepreneur, that's the reason I want to interview you. That's the reason we want to have this conversation. Yeah. And it's what happens, right? Yeah,
and I appreciate you having me on, man. This is exciting. We started doing our own podcast, so it's cool being able to come on other people's podcasts. It makes me feel important, right? Yeah. And seeing different setups and whatnot, and just being able to talk about this kind of thing. I think the concept of your podcast is really cool. Because you're right, it does leave clues. You just don't wake up one day and you're successful.
Absolutely.
There's a lot that goes into it, and I've read a quote not too long ago, and it said, you can't imagine or you struggle with making $20,000 a month until you surround yourself with people who can make $20,000 in a day. Absolutely. And it changes your perspective, right?
Yeah.
But it just doesn't happen, right? Mm-hmm. You got to change your mindset, and that's part of those clues that you leave. So just the concept of this, and I really get excited talking about business and marketing and entrepreneurship and because it's just a different animal. So definitely appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, but you kicked it off already strong. Talking and I'm looking at how you're talking about who you surround yourself with, because if you're surrounding yourself with people like you said who may be making a lot less than $20,000 a month or sometimes even a year, then that number can seem astronomical.
Yeah, and
just by being around a different set of people, it just completely opens you up to something new and what's possible.
Absolutely. And part of, I think we all grow up and we all go through school and we all start, our jobs, right? And I think it's not a secret that the natural tendency of people is to be negative, right? And sometimes when you're surrounded by the constant, and sometimes it's family, sometimes it's friends, sometimes it's just coworkers, sometimes it's just people that you don't even know, right? But what happens is the more successful or the more you put into yourself, the louder those people become, right? So it's really easy to get bogged down in that mindset, like, this is it. This is where I've peaked. Yeah. But you've got to be able to separate yourself from those people and surround yourself with people that think either like you or think where you want to be. Yeah. And once you surround yourself with people that think like that, and you realize, not everybody's negative, right? Yeah. Not everybody's angry. You really start unlocking some doors and unlocking some potential to be able to elevate where you want to be. So surrounding yourself with the right people is one of the biggest keys to success, but it's also one of the challenging things because you got to cut bait sometimes. You got to cut some people loose. Yeah, there's negative people.
That can be hard to do. It sounds easy enough, right? So these people are toxic or they're not good for you or where you want to be, right? But like you said, sometimes they can be family.
Yeah, absolutely. Family, close friends, people you've known all your life, but they're holding you back. And part of business, part of success is learning how to have those difficult conversations, right? As a business owner, I've learned to I won't say I've learned. It's a learning process to well, at least learn to anticipate that those conversations are going to happen. So,
Okay.
So you know, family and friends and people you've been connected with for a long time, there's a hard conversations, even harder, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes, you know, I'm not saying it's the right way, but you may have to go the office space approach where it's, you know, well, we need to fire this guy.
Yeah.
Well, we stopped his pay. We'll let it work itself out, you know? So sometimes you just got to do that. You know, you start dialing back your communication and whatnot. And, you know, it's not fun. You know, after a while, you know, you may have those questions like, hey, man, you know, you don't call anymore. You know, we don't hang out anymore. You know, what's up? So
I noticed, too, that it's a lot harder to have somebody else change to be how you are rather than just, like you said, changing your circle, your environment. Yeah. So if you change your environment, then those people that you may have to cut off, sometimes they'll see the change in you and they'll decide, okay, well, you know, they have to want it for themselves, basically.
You're absolutely right. Absolutely right. You have to want it for yourself. Yeah. Because when you look around and it's exhausting trying to explain to people why you've changed, why your mentality's changed. Yeah. It's because they just don't get it, right? And it's one of those situations that unless you're in it, it's hard to understand. Yeah. And even though something as simple as, hey, I just want to be successful, right? It can be complicated, you know, because there's a lot involved in that. Yeah. And so when you're talking to other people and trying to explain to them that, it's exhausting. You know, I'm sure we've all done it. You know, like, no, it's not that I don't want to hang out, but I got all this other stuff I need to do, right? And it's just like when you have kids, right? You got friends that don't have kids, and right? And you're like, we don't hang out anymore. Well, I got kids now. We'll get a babysitter. It's not always that easy.
Baseball games to go to, and
right? You know,
homework to help with.
So sometimes not that I don't have enough time. It's just that the time I have for those things are occupied by someplace else, right? Yeah. And sometimes you're lucky enough to have a family or friends or those people that root for you. They're encouraging you. Yeah. But sometimes, like I said, it's you know, why don't we hang out anymore? And you still got to have those conversations. Yeah.
Absolutely. So that's the hard part, but some of the joys and the good parts of entrepreneurship and business is, you know, being able to see and help other people grow. Yep. You know, and your business is phenomenal, man.
Thanks.
I don't know another home inspector that I ever want to work with unless company, because not only yourself, you know, you're good at what you do, but you've been able to hire right and have the right team and people who are just as talented as you. Yeah. And you pour and nurture into them and other people. I see you teach classes and things like that. Yeah,
and for anybody listening, I paid Kevin some money to say that before we got started. But you know, and some of that is luck. You know, when it was just me, I started off doing this of like, you know what, I just want to do home inspections, right? Yeah. So me, I need to do five a week. It's all I need to do to make what I was making before. Okay. You know, when I was working for the man, right? All right. And then 5 turned into 12 real quick, and it's like, man, I'm just tired, right? Yeah. So, which we all know. Well, anybody who's been in business for themselves know that first couple of years, if not longer, it's to be successful. It's 6-7 days a week, right? Yeah. It doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. So I was in that routine, and then I was like, you know, it's time to hire somebody. I never thought about hiring somebody, but you know, so my goals changed. And that's another important lesson to learn is that your goals are going to change. You know, where you think you want to be in 5 years. Yeah. You know, that's a soft goal, right? Goal, yeah. Because it's going to change. So I got fortunate enough to link up with Gordon, and Gordon was early retirement from the insurance industry. We did complex claims and things like that. Mm-hmm. So he had field experience. You know, he's the one dealing with contractors and things like that. And after the end of his ride time trying to get his license, you know, I said, offered him a job. And it was just because you can tell that he bought into what I was selling, right? And then a couple months later, I was approached by Aaron Bailey, who owned National Property Inspections, South Richmond, and he was ready to get out of the game. Mm-hmm. He wanted to go do something else, but he had a company. And in home inspections, if you're a single person, if I was always by myself or Aaron's by himself, there's really nothing to buy there, right?
Okay.
Because it's like people don't go to 360 because they go to Chick-fil-A, right?
Yeah.
You know, I like Chick-fil-A. It doesn't matter where I go.
Yeah.
Most people don't even know what a home inspection is,
Yeah.
let alone
I've
brand
seen it.
recognition, right? It's the individual.
Uh-huh.
So it's hard to sell that, but because he had people, made it a worthwhile, at least opportunity to think about.
Okay.
So fortunately, me and Aaron operated. There's a lot of differences, but there's a lot of similarities in how we approach the business. Mm-hmm. And one of those is just who we surround ourselves with. And he had some really good guys. And so while I didn't train them, you know, I didn't have any hesitation bringing them on board because of their reputation already, right? Has there been some discussions and altering of you know, that's with anything. But
well, like any change merger, I mean, you got a bank merger, you got any company merger, even if you have a new supervisor that just comes in at your job, there's going to be some leadership style changes. There's going to be some processes that are different. And so how did you get around that type of pushback and keep the cohesion? The culture,
right? Before getting in business, I spent 5 years in the Navy. And then I spent 12 years in a fire department, paid fire department, career fire department, whatever you want to call it. And
so you know a team. You know things about a team.
Yeah, you know, and along with that is the good leaders.
Yeah.
But it's also the bad leaders, right? And you learn from both.
Yeah.
And the bad leaders, and you use that term loosely at times, is they come in and they want to put their stamp on it right away. And it's wholesale changes. Yeah. You know, we don't pack the hose this way anymore. Yeah. Well, why don't we pack the hose that way anymore? You know, when I was on the flight deck, we had our called aircraft handling officer, and it's an officer, and you know, officers rotate, right? He's a pilot by nature, but he had to do his different time and whatnot, and he chose the flight deck, and he says, we had 53 helicopters, you know, world's biggest transport helicopters, and there's only one way you can park them. Right. Yeah. And he says, no, that takes up too much time. Park him this way. And he had like 80 years of experience saying, no, can't do that. And he's like, do it. Yeah, this is how we're going to do it from now on. So first time they put one bird into another. And that's an expensive oopsie, right? Yeah. So you learn from that. So when we took over, you know, I needed to see, one, what are they doing well? What do they not do well? They already had a good reputation. Okay. So part of it was just coming in and saying, hey, there's going to be some changes, right? Yeah. And the biggest change was two things. One, we're switching softwares. They use a different software. I didn't like that software. It looked like it's from like the 1980s. Yeah. And I like my software. And I've gotten business just because of my software. And
so you're saying what that software produces, like what you're delivering to the customer?
Absolutely. Okay. And so, and of course, people don't like change, right? Yeah. So, and that's a big change, especially because it's technology. So changing software, and then my expectations was everybody to have certain certifications. One of them being drones, right? We use drones because I use drones, because Gordon used drones. My philosophy is that if I can do it, but I'm busy and you show up, you need to be able to do the same capabilities that I do, right? Not, hey, I can't see that because it's you know, raining or old or wet or too high, and I can't climb up there today. Yeah. No. You know,
then you give a bad inspection.
Exactly. Exactly. So those are the two biggest changes, right? And other than that, it was just kind of see what happens, you know, and then make tweaks along the way. Like, all right, well, let's do this a little bit differently. You know, we could have done it this way, but you know, let's do it this way from now on. And you just make little tweaks, right? Because they still have an identity, right? And you still need to leverage what's worked up until that point of their identity. And the goal was and is, and I told them from the beginning, I said, the goal is, and it's always going to be, taking what you know and what you do and expanding on that, right? Yeah. And building on that. So our goal is to be busier. Right. And I've been successful for certain reasons. So let's take those and implement them for everybody. So, but yeah, the biggest thing is just not coming in there with
just laying the hammer down and saying it's going to be my way. We're going to change it.
Exactly.
That kills the culture.
I mean, you can, but you know, all of a sudden now I have, you know, a bunch of trucks and equipment that I can't staff
you can't drive them
right? So, but once they see the success that's starting to take place, then that buy-in becomes greater, right?
Okay.
And then once you get that buy-in, then you can start making more changes, right? But it's all about getting that buy-in, that trust, So if you don't have that and you come in through the door and you don't, especially if you make changes, you don't have the supporting documentation to support your changes, right? Like I'm doing it just because
this is why,
a long time ago, my wife worked for Penny's, J.C. Penney's, before she became a realtor. And Penny's...
You threw me off. So I was like, I hope she didn't work for Penny's.
Right? And they, their CEO left and they hired, I think, Ron Johnson from Apple, right?
Yeah.
And it didn't work out very well because he made all these changes. Well, he was very successful at Apple. But when you come in...
He tried to apply the Apple...
Right. But when you come in, Jason, it's just, I don't care what you did at Apple, We need to know what you're going to do here and how's it going to work, right? So even though you were successful someplace else, like, I don't care what you did someplace else, right? That's today's problem. That's what are you going to do for me today? So there's a very delicate process that you gotta handle that.
Yeah, you talk about the Navy, and that's one of the things. And some of the bad leaders, and I was in the Army, so some of the bad leaders we had did exactly that. They would say, well, at my last duty station, we used to do this. Or when I was in command here, we did this. And I'm like, well, it's a different dynamic, So bring those ideas and bring that experience with you. But, find out what's working here, analyze that and get some feedback too from the people that's working here.
Yeah. And you gotta, and like I said, you gotta have buy-in. You gotta have buy-in from, and they gotta trust you. And that's going to take time, and once they start trusting you, then you start sharing some of those ideas to implement. And that's when it really takes off. Yeah. Right. So if I come to you and I have all these ideas and things like that, I say, just do it, Well, one, I don't even know who you are. Right. So everybody has their strengths and weaknesses. And I always go by the philosophy of, if you're the smartest man in the room, you're in the wrong room, right? So me coming in doing wholesale changes, well, I need to figure out what works first. What's worked to get you to this point first, and then go from there. But you definitely got to have that trust and build that trust and have before you can really just start taking the sledgehammer to everything. Because like I said, you're just going to have people just angry and upset, and then you got a company, but you ain't got nobody to staff the trucks, right? Yeah.
So it seems like you've done that right. Not obviously a part of the day-to-day, but I have, worked with your team on different projects and things like that. And it seems like y'all have a good thing going, a good dynamic. So what you're talking about seems to work.
Yeah, I think it does. And part of that also comes down to when you make mistakes, right? Because it's going to happen. Yeah. It doesn't matter what you do. Things are going to happen, and I've said this several times at our meetings and when we're talking like, hey, we're going to do 12, 13, 14, 1,500 plus inspections a year, right? Can't be perfect every day.
Yeah.
Want to be, right?
Yeah.
But there's a lot of factors in that, right? And we had one recently and it just went sideways. Inspection went sideways, right? And the inspector that was involved, I didn't beat him up. I just say, hey, this is the feedback there. He called me. Yeah. This is an issue. You're going to get a phone call, right? Yeah. So
at least he gave you the heads up.
He did. We talked about it, and I talked to the other party, the agent, anyways, and the agent, rock star agent, super cool, super understanding. But there was very much a lot of learning involved there, right? Teachable moments for everybody, right? Yeah. And I never once had to say, hey, pulling you off the truck or, hey, maybe do some remedial training or no, because they buy in to the point where I don't have to say anything because when they know that I'm frustrated or disappointed, right, or aggravated or whatnot because of something that happened like that, they beat themselves up more than I ever could, right, because they care, right? So it doesn't do me any good. And how many times have we seen that happen, right? You screw up and,
and they come down on you so hard.
Yeah. Back to office space, I got 8 bosses. So when I screw up, I get yelled at 8 different times, So it doesn't do anything, right? So a couple of days went by, we had a meeting, team meeting anyways, coming up and came back to me and said, could have handled it differently. Didn't even have to say anything, like, yeah, you're right. We could have handled it differently.
Yeah, just owned it.
And we talked about that and we talked about it as a group because I tell those guys, we win together, we lose together, right?
Yeah.
So it's not just about making changes, but it's also to be able to navigate those waters, because those waters are very uncomfortable when you get those phone calls, right or wrong, right? Whether, this situation, I said, I could see where both sides were right. I can see where both sides were wrong, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and let's talk about it and let's work through it and see how we can improve so it doesn't happen again. And very receptive and to the point where, like I said, they were, I can see that. After a couple of days, give us some breathing room, and it's hard, it's hard when you're the one in charge, because it's like, we were talking about before, got that email. I can send a response right now.
Yeah.
But I should probably wait.
Let it simmer a little bit. Yeah.
And that way I can formulate my response. And the same thing happens with this kind of thing too.
Okay.
Like, I get that phone call. I was like, man, didn't need to go that way. And it's easy to just pick up the phone and just start yelling. But, let's give them a few days, think about it. And then let's come back to the table. Yeah. And when we come back to the table, it's, that could have been different.
Yeah, that's a great approach. I'm quite sure nothing was done, like you said, on both sides out of malice. No. So if you give it just a little bit of time, you can come with it with fresh eyes, fresh ears, and temperatures have lowered a little bit.
Exactly. Have some time to process it. Right. And that's the problem that I think a lot of times happens, is that we don't allow times to process when mistakes are made or when certain situations happen, because most of the time we're still, that chemical reaction going on inside our brains and whatnot is still peaking, and we don't have the ability to process things yet, because we're still on that high, whether, we're showing it or not, right? It's still there. We're still amped up to some degree. So we've got to let that process and marinate and start replaying that in our heads, 15 times to, okay, I can start seeing where, I should have done better, or I should have done this, I should have done that, and whatnot. So, and, handle it that way, then a lot of times those problems work themselves out, but going back to what you said, the important part, and I'm lucky because I have guys that they care, right?
Yeah, they do.
The bigger you get, the more likely you're going to get people that don't care.
Yeah.
Right. Or you're going to have to get to that point where you say, you know what, it's just not working out. Right. So it's important. A lot of people blow it off to get and establish, your mission, vision, and values, right? Your core values. A lot of people just put that as, a tagline on their website or on the wall.
And never look at it again.
Exactly. But when you're hiring people and trying to bring people in, even in this challenging market where it's hard to find the right person, you got to go back to that, and we got to establish it, and you got to believe it. As corny as that sounds sometimes, this is, you start there, and a lot of times you can kind of.
So how do you find that balance? Because you've got goals as a company, and you want to grow to a certain point, but you don't want to lose that branding. You don't want to lose that culture. You want to have the right team fit. So do you have a point that you analyze things and say, look, I'm going to turn down business because, for lack of better terms, all money ain't good money, right? So you say, look, I'm going to stop here, because if I continue to grow, I got to hire more people that may not fit the culture the way you want it to.
Yeah, I mean, that's a hard place to be, and I talk to Jeff Zielinski a lot, who owns Pest Now. Okay. And Jeff constantly reminded me when it was time for me to grow was, nobody's going to do inspections like you do. Yeah. Right. And that's a hard thing to come to terms with. Like when it's ready to grow and you go from by yourself to that first step, the hardest thing to overcome is coming to terms with nobody's going to do it like me. Right. Yeah. And then when you get that phone call, I'm like, well, so-and-so missed this. Okay, well, I wouldn't have missed that.
Yeah, right.
Because it wasn't me, And like, you know what? I'm gonna fire everybody. I'm gonna do it by myself from now on, But you can't do that. So sometimes you do. You got to take a pause. Like, you know what? We're at capacity, and that's okay, because the right person hasn't come through the door yet. Yeah. And that's kind of where we are right now. I could hire somebody because we're probably about 80 to 90% booked week in and week out, and anytime you're 80, 90% booked, it's time to hire, right? because we're still doing a lot of marketing. We're still doing a lot of growth activities, a lot of brand awareness and recognition stuff to bring in more business that I know that we're going to have to turn away. Right.
Yeah.
But you can't hire the wrong person, because you hire the wrong person, that goes against what you've established and built and what you believe in as far as the values and your vision and all that goes.
Yeah, you don't get a home inspection too often.
Right.
So that client's first and maybe only impression of 360 is going to be what it is that day.
Exactly. And we obviously deal with a lot of realtors. And I know your wife's in the next room, so I'll say what I tell most people is that if it wasn't for realtors, this would be a really good job, right? Halfway joking. Yeah. But there's 6,000 to 7,000 realtors in the Metro Richmond area, right? In order for us to be successful, I think I've narrowed it down that each inspector needs about 60 to 100 realtors feeding them, right, to stay busy.
Okay.
And those are some realtors that are very high producing realtors, and some that do the average to below average yearly, right, just to keep them fed, right? So 60 to 100, there's 4 of us that's licensed and doing inspections. So that's at a max 400 realtors out of 7,000. Yeah. So now not only do we have the client, but we have a lot of realtors that's never seen us, never used us, never heard of us.
Yeah.
And your first interaction is a bad one, right? Now I'm gonna go back to who I used before, right?
Yeah.
So it's very important to get that right person and get them to where you're comfortable on their own, interacting with people, because there's a lot of good inspectors, right? Not a lot of good business people.
Yeah. So the customer service part of it, or the interpersonal skills, they may not have.
Correct.
Because they spend a lot of time, in different spaces of the house or on your own. But at some point, you've got to interact with that client and explain things.
Exactly. And that's what I've stressed from day one when I bought out NPI and we all came together is from start to finish, I don't want you to miss anything, right? The goal is not to miss anything major, because we're all going to miss something. It's just the nature of the beast, right? It doesn't. Every inspector misses something on every inspection. Yeah. If they say they don't, they're lying, or they've never done an inspection. It's just the way it is. But the goal is
a lot to look at.
But the goal is to never miss anything major, right? I said, I don't care how you do it, I don't care how you get there, but it's the before and the after is what's important. It's that customer service aspect is what has made us successful, right? Because there's a lot of inspectors out there, and there's a lot of good inspectors. But like I said, and this is the same for realtors, it's the same for home inspectors, the same for electricians, it's the same for everybody. It's are you a home inspector who happens to own a business, or are you a business person who happens to be a home inspector? And when you apply that mindset to it, and then your doors are going to open. Your growth is going to go through the roof, right?
That's an amazing point, because if you're a business owner first, it just happens to be that home inspections are your product.
Absolutely.
But you could plug and play that, like you said, with anything else, and it could be any other product. But the core values and the system should be the same.
Absolutely. And this is why, Ron Johnson being, who he was, still very successful, but this is why a lot of CEOs will go from Home Depot.
Are you looking to buy or sell your home, but not quite sure if now is the right time? Well, contact Morgan & Co. and allow them to help you make that decision. Morgan & Co. is a leading, top producing company in Central Virginia. Contact Morgan & Co. today at 804-874-6806 or anytime, day or night, at www.morganandcorealty.com. Now back to the episode.
To, Kroger, to, another industry that has nothing to do with the other ones, right? And it's not because they're experts in those industries. It's because they're approaching it. They realize that they're approaching it as a business, right? And the business that's made the principles and systems that's made them successful, and the thought process made them successful can transfer, right? So it doesn't matter if you're I could train anybody to be a home inspector, right? But I need you to be able to talk to clients.
Yeah, it's what you can't teach.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's no secret. Any realtor that listens will tell you that they got the horror stories of the home inspector coming in. They're going, yep, just need a bulldozer. Like, no.
Yeah.
Or, yep, house is falling down. Don't need to buy this house, and just scaring the clients away. And that's not our job, So you've got to be able, one of the most underutilized theories, I think, that's out there is emotional intelligence. And that's being able to understand how I can talk to you versus how I can talk to somebody else versus how I can talk to somebody else, right? A small portion of it anyway. So, because we've had people who the foundation was literally crumbling and they didn't care.
Yeah, it's fine.
As long as I didn't see any mice, right? Yeah. And I've seen people who
sometimes it's knowing that clients, like you said, emotional intelligence, but it's knowing their experience and comfort level.
Exactly.
Because once you've been through, if you're a first time home buyer, it's gonna scare the crap out of you, right?
Yeah.
But if you've been through a few of these and you've seen some horrors, and you're like, oh, okay, well, I already know I'm gonna approach that or fix it. So all I need you to do is let me know that it exists, that problem exists. I don't want it to blindside me.
Right. Exactly. We've had, like I said, doorknobs loose, and it's I don't want this house anymore. Like, all right.
It's not that bad.
Yeah, that's the most we found. It'll be okay. So yeah, that's the part of that a lot of people fail at when they want to start a business because they don't realize it. Hey, I'm really good at doing whatever it is that I'm here for, right? And there's best in the town, best in the city, best in the world, right? At what I do. But if you don't understand that business side of things, and that business side is very much a people side of things. And anybody that really knows me will tell you I don't like people, right? I don't like talking to people. I don't like people.
Well, I guess I don't know you that well. I thought the complete opposite. Every time I've ever interacted with you, it's been, joyful. It's been fun. It's been
that's because we talk about things that I'm interested in, right?
Well, then you like me because you can ask my wife. I don't really associate with a lot of people.
No.
I associate with who I associate with.
Right.
But outside of that, I'm not really a big people
person. So understanding that, like when I want to start a business, I got to talk to people, and whatnot. But like I say, you just can't blow it off because without that side of it, you don't have a business. You just have you just doing some jobs, and whatnot. And that's fun for a while. And I think another shortfall of a lot of people that start business is that exit plan, right? I'm not going to be in crawl spaces when I'm 65. I can't.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
I mean, I probably could, but I don't want to, right? Yeah. And nobody wants a 65-year-old home inspector.
And that's not really why you start a business.
Right. So at some point, there's got to be what's your exit plan? Is that me transferring out? Is that me building it to where I have successors and I can just take a step back?
Yeah.
Is that me building something to where I can sell it? What does that look like? But just me stumbling around until I'm done. And then we all know about Social Security. That ain't gonna be around forever.
No.
The cost of living's not going down.
It wouldn't help anyway.
Exactly. So, so what's your plan and where do you see yourself? Because, like I said, there's a lot of people like that too. In every industry. But
it's good that you're even thinking that far ahead or that approach, because some people get into it. Like you started this business, you made not when you initially started, but when you acquired the other company. I'm sure it's a large capital investment, and you got to think far enough ahead. Like, okay, I'm going to get this return back off of this investment, but also what's the exit strategy? Where am I going long term, and what do I see for myself in this business?
Absolutely, and that's where getting into like strategic planning, and not that you got to pay somebody $15,000 to walk you through a strategic plan for your company, but it's important to know, and it's important to know where you want to be, right?
Right.
And you got to figure out your systems and how you want to get there. And that's where your mission and vision come in at, right? Because your mission is who you are right now.
Okay.
What are we trying to accomplish right this second? That's our mission. But our vision is where do we want to be, right? So our vision is, and the in-between, what some people say your core values is how you're going to bridge that gap. So you have that for your company, But you got to have that for yourself too. Like, what's my vision? Where do I want to be at?
Yeah.
You know, what's the end goal?
So on a personal level.
Exactly.
You gotta,
yeah. That way, because you just can't wake up one day like, yeah, I'm done. Yeah. I don't think I'm gonna do this anymore.
Yeah, so you got to run your life like a business.
Exactly. Exactly.
At least have plans, goals, processes.
Yeah.
Even a budget. I mean,
exactly.
It really is
exactly. Yep.
Solitary company.
That's right. Yeah. Because I mean, and if you do it right, I mean, most people can see the business as a reflection of you, right?
Yeah.
If you do it right. So a lot of times they kind of, they're interchangeable. They're interwoven, I guess. So get your fingerprints all over it, so to speak. So, but yeah, you really gotta, like I say, you gotta have that exit strategy. Unless you want to be one of those people that's going to be 70, playing Eastwood up there at 91 years old, still acting, not because, I mean, some people do it because they just love to do it, and that's cool.
But it's good to not have to.
Exactly.
At least you had the plan. It's like, okay, now I'm doing it for the love or the passion of what I'm doing, not because I have to and still maintain my lifestyle.
Exactly. Yeah, if I want to work 2 days this week, great. Want to work 5 days this week, that's great too.
Yeah.
But the systems are in place that the company's still successful. Right. Yeah. Because I've passed that on, whatever that looks like, so yeah, absolutely.
That's great. Well, I wish you the best. I mean, I love your company. I can't wait to see you continue to grow and, of course, continue to keep working with you.
Yeah, man.
And if I could bend any realtors' arms and make sure they work with you, I definitely will, man.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. So I got something I like to do on every episode.
Okay.
So the name of the show is Success Leaves Clues Podcast.
Yeah.
So I like to point out a couple of clues that I picked up during our conversation. And then I'm quite sure, people who are watching or listening to the episode, they pick up their own things. So one thing I picked up is you talked a lot about the team and the culture. And I think if you want to run a successful business, even if it's a business of, one or two, you got to start with, what you want to be seen as your brand. Yeah. And you got to, develop a strong culture.
Yep.
You talk about also your processes. So you got to have good processes in place and, not be the authoritarian who's just going to say, look, this is my way or the highway.
Yeah.
But you want to have systems and processes in place. So everybody, even when they're out and you're not there, they're doing the exact same thing because we got the same model, the same, SOP, and, everybody can just follow that checklist.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the other thing you're just talking about, just knowing where you're going as a person. You talk about the mission and the vision. And I think that's, super key to have a vision. You can't just go, haphazardly around and think you're going to run a company.
Yeah.
You got to have, especially if you're going to lead other people. If you're going to lead other people, you have to have a vision so they can, know who they're following. Absolutely,
man. And that's key is if they don't see what you see, then it's going to be clock in, clock out, go home. Right. But if they see and they buy in to where you're going, then they're going to put as much of themselves in it as you are.
Yeah.
And you're going to get there a lot faster. So the mission, vision, values, all that stuff, man, that's critical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, great. Appreciate your time, Sidney.
Thanks for having me, man.
Thanks for coming on the show. And hope to have you back sometime.
Absolutely. Anytime. Right.
And I'll also want to run over, I'll put something in the link for the description because I got to check him out. He's a podcaster as well. I love to have fellow podcasters on the show. It's I know it's a lot different being on that side and getting interviewed.
But it makes me feel like I'm important now, though. So
you've been important. I feel important. You came on. I was like, man, I got him. So I appreciate it. Thanks for your time.
No, thank you.
All right. I want to remind everybody out there, if you can dream it, you can achieve it. Until next time on Success Leaves Clues Podcast.